I'm concerned, the bullies are winning here. There is a majority of people who have the power and resources to put out there an image about the niqab. I teach in schools, and I said to a young bunch of children, I said to them, if somebody came into...
Douglas Murray, a prominent British author, journalist and commentator, has articulated nuanced and controversial perspectives on various socio-political issues, including the role of the hijab in Western societies. Murray is known for his critiques of multiculturalism, Islam and identity politics, offering sharp analysis that often sparks debate and reflection.
Well, with me now are Shalina Litt, a writer and a blogger who's also a child behaviour specialist. I'm also joined by Sahar Al-Faifi, a community activist who's also a molecular geneticist. And Fatima Barkatullah is the director of the Seeds of Change Muslim Women's Conference, the largest of its kind in Europe. Also here are the writer and commentator Douglas Murray, Kola Hassan, who's a lecturer and advisor on Islam, and last but not least, the writer and broadcaster Yasmin Alabai-Brown. Can I just begin with you, Fatima?
Yes.
56% of British people don't really support the wearing of the full face veil in public. They don't want it.
Well, I think it depends on where you take the poll, really, because, something that I've recently launched is a project called Secrets of a Muslim Woman, and it's all about letting people know why we do what we do, because I think a lot of it is to do with not really being familiar with it. You know, I mean, my message to the British public is that you've got nothing to fear. You know, this is a piece of cloth.
They don't feel that, though, do they? Because elsewhere in this poll, a majority said they don't know how to relate to a woman wearing a full face veil.
I think, you know, the people who have actually interacted with women who wear the face veil, people who work with them. I mean, we're in East London today. In East London, the veil is practically, you know, normal on the streets of East London. People who've actually interacted and worked with women who wear the veil have absolutely no problem with it. I think it's the fear of the unknown.
Douglas Murray, would you like to see the veil banned here?
Well, I think, like a majority of British people, I think that it should be banned in public places, particularly places like courtrooms, where it's absolutely imperative that a jury are able to see the faces of people who are accused. As for an overall ban, I think, look, my own opinion is that niqab is highly undesirable. I think that we live in a society where people do show their faces, where huge amounts of our social interaction depend on people showing their faces. I think that it's very difficult to enforce a ban in public places like streets, but it should be certainly a desirable thing to discourage its wearing.
To impose a ban, but in principle you'd like to see one because you think in Britain it's unacceptable.
In public buildings, in courts, in schools and places like this, absolutely, I think a ban would be very sensible. In streets and so on, I think it's difficult, but it should be societally discouraged.
Fatima?
No, a ban, I mean, I think it's a complete overreaction. Look, the niqab has been part of the British landscape for the last 20-odd years, OK? Muslim women have been going about their business. We've got a radio presenter here, we've got a scientist, we've got talented Muslim women who've got a lot to give to this society, who've been doing so and been very sensible about it. When we need to remove our face veils, we do it. But how do you think we get through airport security?
I mean, what about the fact that 56% of people are saying they don't want it here?
You know what? I'm not surprised at all, because when you know that high-profile politicians making such offensive comments and big fuss about it, I am not surprised when the public say they are against it.
We show our faces.
Exactly. The British society, the fabric of the British society is respecting the public freedom. Public freedom is part of it, the religious freedom.
What about the fact that people feel uneasy? They said they don't know how to relate to women who have their faces covered.
First of all, let them interact with us. Let us be open and engaging with them. This is number one. Secondly, 80% of communication in the world does not involve face-to-face. Twitter, Facebook, phones doesn't involve face-to-face communications. The issue is the problemization here. It's not existent problem.
I'm sorry. I worked in this area for 7 years, about 15 years ago, and this was not, as you said, a norm. This has been imported and exported for reasons which we haven't got time to go into. We live in a society, in this society, and we live in a country which is very, very complicated. And to shut yourself off as if the rest of us are infections and cutting...
How are we do not...
This is the meaning.
We are engaged.
Shalina,
How are we shut off?
Shalina, you have said that in engaging with your elderly white neighbour who feels uneasy, sometimes you remove the veil. When you worked with children, you remove the veil. Isn't that an acknowledgement that it is difficult for people to engage with women who have their faces covered?
Yeah, I think it is. And I also honour what Douglas Murray has just said. He couldn't actually feel comfortable and, you know, I'm making a presumption here, but you couldn't say, let's do an outright ban. And that's great because I understand you look at social cohesion. It's about looking at, let's isolate it. Whose discomfort are we going to favour? Because if I lift my veil, I'm then uncomfortable.
Douglas Murray's views on the hijab must be understood within the broader framework of his critique of multiculturalism and its impact on Western societies. He argues that Western nations have struggled to reconcile their liberal values with the cultural and religious practices of immigrant communities, particularly those from predominantly Muslim countries. Murray contends that multicultural policies have often led to social fragmentation and the erosion of national identity as Western societies grapple with how to accommodate diverse cultural practices while upholding fundamental liberal principles. Central to Murray's critique of the hijab is its symbolic significance within Islam and its implications for gender equality, secularism, and social cohesion in Western contexts.
And we've favoured someone's discomfort.
We live in a society, but I don't believe in the French ban. I don't think you should do that.
But why
absolutely,
not? If you're opposed to it,
no,
if you
I
think
there is a very simple way of saying, and a non-racist way of saying, in public institutions, everybody, whoever they are, must show their faces. It's Muslim exceptionalism that is becoming the problem.
No, it's not.
If we have the same rule for everybody, and at home, on the streets, I don't want people stopped. Okay.
We accommodate religious expression in this country. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses who don't want blood transfusions, Sikh people who want to wear turbans. We make exceptions, you know, in certain situations. And so, look, you know, I really want to reach out to the public and say, you've got nothing to fear from us.
But take up Yasmin's,
I was born in this country. I love this country.
Take up Yasmin's point that this is about exceptionalism. Take up Yasmin Alibhai-Brown's point about this is about exceptionalism.
We accommodate, don't we, in this country, and in my country, Britain, we accommodate religious expression. And we do make exceptions for people. And there's nothing, and that's what I thought.
And we cannot destroy the minorities and the religious belief in the name of equality.
But what if the majority feel uncomfortable, feel uneasy and say they don't want it?
I think then the onus is on us as well, isn't it? I mean, to actually reach out. And I'm hoping that this is just going one step towards that, to say to people, look, you know, we're human beings just like you.
But if I may very quickly, religious freedom is an extremely important thing, and I think most people who would agree, I hope in this room, that Britain is the most tolerant place in the world to live, including as a Muslim.
Yeah.
But let's just add one thing to this, if I may. The issue of social interaction is very important, and not just to me, but obviously to a majority of the British people. Yeah. What I say tonight, what Yasmin says and other people say tonight, people see our faces, they know who said it. I'm sorry to say this, but nobody knows who you are. They can hear your name, they can't see you. If I say something stupid on television tonight, people know it's me saying it. If you do, with all due respect, you can disappear and no one knows.
No, we're not disappearing.
What does this say?
Come on.
The meaning of this thing is extremely important to address. The meaning of this thing is women are by nature dangerous to men and society. Therefore, they must be covered, they must be buried. That's the meaning of it. And that's what I cannot accept.
I mean, Fatima, come back on exactly that point, because we have spoken to women who say that they cover their faces because they don't want to incite passions among men. I mean, that is essentially Yasmin's point.
Well, look, essentially, I think, you know, that's Yasmin's opinion.
No, it's not my opinion.
Yes, it is. It is your opinion.
Ask the Taliban. Ask Taliban why they're opposing it.
Yasmin, you know, I'm really sorry. Maybe you haven't really met women in Niqab. I would like to invite you out to my house. You know, you can see my face. We can sit together. We can have a laugh.
Yes, but
and then I think it will change your opinion.
Couldn't come to your house and see your face, though, could he?
I can assure you I'm not going to be
aroused. He could meet my husband. No, you're welcome. You would be welcome to, you know, come to my house.
Kola Hassan, can I ask? I mean, you used to wear the niqab and then changed your mind. Why?
Two main reasons. One was theological. I made some attempt to actually study the whole notion of niqab in Islam, and I found that it's not actually mandatory. The hijab, the headscarf, is mandatory, but the niqab is not. It's part of Islamic society right from the beginning, but it's not mandatory. Just go and read a little bit of Ibn Kathir, for example.
Yeah, I'm a scholar in training, actually, so I do know that.
Sorry, and secondly, we have a social function in society. We are here to interact with society. We have to have a social consciousness. We have to benefit society. We have to interact with society. And I realized in those 3 years, I was a nobody. Nobody wanted to talk to me because they couldn't talk to me. I could smile until the cows come home, but nobody could see me smiling.
You see, that's a very good point, isn't it? Because you say you were a nobody,
yes,
and yet many people in our poll disagreed with this notion that it was empowering in any way.
And I bet you there were many Muslims in that survey. Most Muslims don't care for this either. So to say British as if it was, non-Muslims, most of us daren't speak out. When I do, I get death threats. I've had emails just this week
from
Niqab. He's calling me a prostitute. What is this freedom that we have? We can't even criticize what is not acceptable, actually.
You are free to criticize anything.
What do you make of that, making, in a free democracy, making her views known and getting that sort of...
That's fine, we're happy about it.
I think the issue that we...
But about the response that she gets.
Well, that's wrong,
terrible.
obviously. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's not acceptable.
We should be able to discuss it. We should be able to talk about it. And I acknowledge that people feel uncomfortable.
One of the problems is that the minute religion comes into it, what happens with the people who do wear the niqab often feel they are...
Murray argues that the hijab, along with other forms of Islamic dress codes, symbolises patriarchal control over women's bodies and choices. He contends that the hijab perpetuates gender inequality by promoting modesty norms that restrict women's freedom to dress as they choose. From Murray's perspective, the hijab represents a form of religious coercion rather than a symbol of personal choice or empowerment for women. He often contrasts this with Western feminist ideals of autonomy and self-expression, suggesting that defending the hijab as a matter of personal choice overlooks its broader social implications.
Religiously superior and more pious than people.
Nobody has said that today. Nobody has said that today.
Let me just move it out to the audience, if you would. Sophia, I'm right in saying you also used to wear the niqab, and you again decided not to.
Yes.
Why was that?
The reason for that was that, and that was a personal choice. I had an incident where niqab was pulled off me, and it really frightened me, and I became very, very anxious. But I feel very strongly about some of the things that's been said here. One of the things that you've been, for example, Yasmin, you've said about freedom of speech and how people are threatening you. I think that's completely unacceptable Islamically. We can't be responsible for all the Muslims and for all the people around the world. But I will say that just like you have the freedom of choice to express how you feel, we have the freedom of choice. I have a freedom of choice to not wear a niqab, and she has the freedom of choice to wear a niqab.
Did you feel that you were forced out of wearing it, or did you come to a different view about it?
Yeah, one of the things it was a very personal choice for me. It meant a lot to me to wear the niqab.
This is not shopping in Primark. This has a meaning, and it's the meaning I'm arguing about.
And actually, but that's your perception.
Let me explain to you the meaning.
Isn't the suggestion of your argument that these women don't know what their own choice is?
That's your perception.
They absolutely do know, which is why I'm objecting to it.
Jasmine, but that's your perception. You think that this is how you... my perception...
Very specific, if you would. You were a psychotherapist.
Yes, I'm a psychotherapist.
But you deal with women who are forced into wearing the niqab.
Another thing I would mention to regarding communication, in the 9 years of counselling with Sakina Muslim Counselling that I do, all of my clients, majority of them are all we do phone counselling. And a lot of good work is done. I don't see their face, they don't see my face. So it's not really about looking at someone and really connecting with that person, because we don't connect with the outer, we connect with the inner.
So you think the loneliness that you talked about seeing in these women comes from where?
And not a single person, not a single woman has said to me, my husband has forced me to wear a niqab. What the issues they do have is regards to niqab, I am fearful to go out. I'm at home, I'm lonely, I'm depressed. I don't even want to go out because I feel like I'm not accepted. And the other thing I really want to express is that where is the humanity? At the end of the day, you know, as a woman, as a person, as a human being, where's my right to be who I am? This is my identity.
You have that right. You have that right, and you exercise it, and so are all of the other ladies in this room. But the question is whether or not, and I would ask this of I think, of everyone in the room who's covered, do you think that by covering your face from everyone else in society, you are exacerbating difference or making it less bad?
Mariam,
would any of you at least recognise that you are exacerbating a difference?
Is this divisive?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to look at human rights, okay? In 1998, there was the Human Rights Convention, okay? Under Article 9, it specifically says we all have the freedom of expression, we have the freedom of belief, we have the freedom of so many things that, you know, like in this country, I thought great...
Mariam, on Douglas Murray's point, sorry, on Douglas Murray's point, that this is, you know, do you understand that many people feel this is divisive? It is a curtain between you and the rest of society.
Well, to be quite frank, I think people are free to feel how they want. It doesn't, I don't care how you feel. It's really, no, wait. Really and truly, it's about my human rights. My human right, I am allowed to cover. You don't have to
just
agree.
Very briefly on the point that many people in the survey said that they feel unease, they feel uncomfortable, they feel anxious.
Well, to be quite frank, I feel like that towards emos, but that's all right.
Can I just point out, there is something fundamentally ludicrous about somebody dressed as you are talking the language of modern human rights.
Absolutely.
Fundamentally ludicrous.
That's in your mind. That's in your mind, Douglas.
Kola Hassan.
This lady is constantly talking about rights. As a Muslim, you should know that responsibility is there as well. You have a responsibility to society around you.
Exactly. I'm a community organizer. I'm a scientist. I am engaged with the community, so I'm not isolated.
You have a responsibility. Sorry, 1 second. You have a responsibility in wider society.
Well, obviously speaking, as a Muslim woman right now, you know, all this talk about there being a fear of us, well, fear stems from ignorance. For them to be fearful, they need to understand us, and we need to understand them. Obviously, as British citizens, we do understand them. We were raised in British schools. Some of us go to university here, we work here. We understand the British culture, but do you really understand the Islamic culture?
Pardon me, that's not the role.
You can't possibly understand the British culture because there's been hundreds of years. And my mother's generation, because I too am a Muslim, my mother's generation, they were beaten, bullied and burnt because they wanted to get rid of all of this and be seen as proper equals. You're betraying that history. And this country fought for women's rights.
For Murray, the hijab poses challenges to secularism in Western societies where the separation of religion and state is seen as essential for maintaining social harmony and individual freedom. He argues that accommodating religious symbols such as the hijab in public spaces undermines the secular fabric of society and can lead to the privileging of religious norms over secular laws and principles. This, in his view, contributes to societal fragmentation and the erosion of a cohesive national identity. Murray emphasises the importance of cultural assimilation and integration for immigrants and minority communities in Western countries. He contends that adopting secular norms and values, including dress codes that reflect these norms, is crucial for fostering social cohesion and ensuring that immigrant communities fully participate in and contribute to Western societies. Murray's position is that multicultural policies should not prioritise cultural relativism at the expense of social integration and national unity.
And you've now taken us back to the dark ages.
I'm sorry, but...
Can I just take it from Shabita? You are a doctor within the NHS. 1 second, please. You are a doctor within the... Excuse me, can we all listen to each other? You're a doctor in the NHS.
Yes, I am.
And obviously that is one of the very public places where a ban, you know, if it were to be considered, that
Well, first of all, I would like to say that calling for a ban on niqab in NHS is actually talking about an issue that does not really exist. Because me and my friends, have been contacting a lot of doctors all across the 4 countries of the United Kingdom, and none of them have ever come across a doctor who actually observed the face veil within NHS, or even a nurse. Exactly. So I don't really see that why an issue that does not really exist is actually being addressed. There is no one, or no doctor or a nurse who actually wears the niqab in NHS,
just very,
even
very
myself,
on that point,
because...
Though, isn't that an acknowledgement that there is a difficulty for many people, that patients would find it uncomfortable?
No, it's not actually like that, because I am not given a choice to wear it within NHS. when I know it as a fact that if I wear my face veil and go to a job interview, I will never be taken up for a job.
How is it to ask, you all here, how is it that you say it's an absolutely fundamental, you have to wear it, it's a right, it's a necessity upon you, but yet you say you go through an airport and it doesn't matter if you lift it? Is it so negotiable? In France, many of the women who said we cannot go out if we don't wear it have taken it off.
Can I just say,
Shalina.
you know, there is a place where we have the right to exercise our right. And if this was a school or a playground, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the bullies are winning here. There is a majority of people who have the power and resources to put out there an image about the niqab. I teach in schools, and I said to a young bunch of children, I said to them, if somebody came into your school, a boy, and he had nail varnish on, and he had high heels on, you know, and you seen him getting bullied, would you defend his right to be the way he was? Or would you ask him to change the way that he's dressed? Now, this is what I'm saying is, I said that I respected the fact that in context, you said in a courtroom, in the classroom, or in public settings where there are people who have got mixed opinions, that we should have policies and procedures that control these things. But being in Britain, I'm proud to be British.
Just very briefly, can I ask you, Sahar, many of the women who came forward to talk to us today are very young. And actually, one of the questions that I think a lot of people ask is, you know, we've looked at Afghanistan and we've heard stories of women who have burnt the face veil and are terrified of the prospect of having to wear it again. Yeah. And they just don't understand how young women in Britain want to wear it here. Very briefly, if you can.
Well, I started wearing the niqab at a young age, and the reason is after a research. It's a long spiritual journey. I found out that when I wear the niqab, I'll be closer to God. It's an act of worship, it's an act of modesty, and it's liberating and dignifying. And since then, I've never changed my mind. And although my parents, my mum, my sister, don't wear it. It's me. It's my personal choice.
But yes, and in a free society, the opinions of other people also have to matter. It's not just about you exercising your choice. The way other people feel about that should be of some concern to you.
But you know, these feelings are coming from negative prejudices.
We have
coming from
You don't want men's opinions? No. You don't want men's opinions?
I'm sorry, we are going to have to end it there. I'm really sorry.
As the only man, I'm sorry you don't want to hear men's opinions.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm afraid that is all we've got time for, though many more people wanted to speak. You can see all...
Murray's views on the hijab are part of a broader critique of multiculturalism and identity politics, which he argues have led to the prioritisation of group identities over individual rights and responsibilities. He suggests that multicultural policies, by encouraging cultural diversity without a strong emphasis on shared values and norms, have contributed to societal divisions and tensions. Murray advocates for a renewed focus on liberal principles such as freedom of expression, gender equality and secularism as the foundation for a cohesive and inclusive society.
My guest tonight is a neoconservative writer who's in the country for the Australian Think Inc. event Polarised alongside Dr. Cornel West. His book is The Strange Death of Europe, Immigration, Identity, Islam.
We do have a problem. We have a problem when the failures of Islam throughout the world, the failures of all Islamic societies come here into Britain. Their intolerance of freedom of conscience, their intolerance of apostates, their intolerance of freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Truth is, the great disappointment of the last 14 years has been that civil society has failed, that we can't do the things to the Islamists that we would do, as I referred to the neo-Nazis.
Please welcome Douglas Murray, everybody. Hello. Welcome, Douglas. Thanks for coming on the show. I know you're very concerned about Western civilization. This show is technically part of the Western canon. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, the decline in a nutshell.
Well, that's a show. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it very much. I just need to make a disclaimer at the top. Myself and the executive producer of this program, Dan Illich, are involved in your tour with Dr. Cornel West in the country. That was separate to the decision to book you on the show. We haven't been bribed into having a neoconservative on the ABC, but I need to put that out there. If people aren't familiar with your work, what is this strange death of Europe that you refer to?
Well, for many years I've travelled as a reporter, as a journalist across the Third World and Middle East, Africa, many of the war zones of these areas, seen many of the places where people are fleeing from. And in 2015, I was reporting from across my continent, across Europe, when people were coming in unprecedented numbers. We were talking about the German population taking an additional 2% in a single year alone, where basically the German Chancellor said anyone who makes it to Europe can come. And I saw all of this firsthand, and I realized that there was a catastrophe in the making, a catastrophe which I think has already started to unfurl in the years since. I realized this is just a version of a problem that every country is having to think about. And we're very lucky countries, yours and mine. We're countries that people want to come to. And that isn't an easy thing to deal with, because we know that we cannot take in the world, and yet we can't have the conversation about what we can do. And I thought that we need to think about this much more deeply than we are.
The political consequences of that decision sort of flowing through Germany and affecting Angela Merkel, some changes seem to be happening. They're trying to get more agreements with North African countries and looking at trying to return some people to where they came from.
Bribed Turkey.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, we already know some of the consequences. German elections saw a party that's generally described as far-right, the AfD, is now the main party of opposition in the German parliament. Unbelievable social problems, unbelievable problems with freedom of expression. I mean, another data law just came in at the beginning of this year that tries to stop German citizens saying very critical things about their government on social media. And I just, you know, who could predict any problem from, for instance, suppressing the rage of the German people? Who could foresee any downside to that? You know.
Not me. All good. Okay. What do you think should happen now to address this situation?
Look, I just, as I say, we have to think about this much more seriously and deeply than we've been thinking about it. A lot of people make a lot of very easy social capital, including a lot of politicians make very easy social capital by basically saying, we're generous, we're open, let them come. They quote John Lennon quite often. And this is cheap and too easy, and it's not up to the task in hand. We have to be able to think about the speed of immigration, the type of immigration we do want, and that means the type of immigration that we just don't need more of. These are really ugly and difficult conversations to have, but it's my belief that if we don't have them, other people will have them, and very bad people will have them. I'm not willing to hand that terrain over. Just not willing to do it.
That ugliness is certainly something we're wrestling with in this country. We always have with immigration in Australia, and now our population has hit 25 million people. Some people are concerned solely by the numbers of immigration that we have, others by the makeup of that immigration. Sure. Some are concerned by both. You talk about how London is a minority white city at the moment. Yeah. It's currently reached that point. In the future, there are predictions that the UK and America will become minority white countries. And I guess when I hear those phrases or those concerns, or when I hear people say phrases like, this part of Sydney doesn't look like how Australia is supposed to look, that makes me feel very nervous.
Yeah, rightly.
It makes me wonder, what are these countries supposed to look like, and who gets to decide that?
Sure. Well, it should be decided by governments which should be accountable to the people. And if the people want such a change to happen, then you can do it. The problem I identify across Europe is that it happens in the face of public hopes and public desire, where the politicians end up berating the public rather than trying to listen to them or trying to answer them. And this, again, is a problem that is just exploding everywhere.
Douglas Murray's perspectives on the hijab have generated significant controversy and debate. Critics accuse him of promoting Islamophobia and undermining religious freedom by advocating restrictions on Islamic religious practices in Western societies. Supporters, however, view his arguments as a defense of secularism, gender equality, and liberal democratic values against cultural practices that they perceive as incompatible with these principles. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.